Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a question that's been around forever. Do women really prefer good guys? We're going to look past the rom-coms and all the dating advice to see what science has to say about, well, one of the biggest decisions any of us ever make, choosing who to be with.
So let's get right to it. Is this whole idea of wanting a good guy just a cultural script we've all learned? Something we picked up from stories and society? Or could it be something way deeper, like a strategy that's actually hardwired into our DNA to solve the age-old problems of survival and, well, making sure our species continues? All right, here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start by asking if this popular idea is even true. Then we'll get into the science of how we choose partners. From there, we'll break down 3 absolutely key traits. We're talking kindness, reliability, and altruism. And then we'll wrap it all up by connecting these ancient instincts to our modern world of love. Okay, so first up, let's tackle that big question. We all have stories from movies, maybe from our own lives. But what does the actual data tell us? When people are looking for a serious, long-term partner, what are the traits that really consistently make it to the top of the list? This idea, it feels like it's been around forever, right? It just pops up in stories and advice generation after generation. But evolutionary psychology gives us this incredible new way to understand why it's so persistent. It kind of reframes this whole preference not just as some nice cultural idea, but as a deep-seated survival strategy. And to really get that strategy, we need a scientific framework. So that brings us to a really core concept in this field, sexual strategies theory. And trust me, it's a super powerful tool for explaining how our romantic choices today are actually shaped by a logic that's, well, ancient. So sexual strategies theory basically says our mating psychology isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. Nope. Instead, it's like we have this whole menu of different strategies, kind of like different tools in a toolbox that we use for different situations and different goals. Everything from a short-term fling to a partnership that lasts a lifetime. And this right here is the absolute core distinction. The stuff that might be attractive for a short-term thing can be totally different from what's needed for a serious, long-term, high-investment partnership. And for the rest of our time here, we're going to be focused squarely on the psychology of that long-term choice. Okay, so with that framework in our back pocket, let's look at our first huge trait, kindness. Now, it might seem like a simple, kind of soft quality, right? But from an evolutionary point of view, it's actually this incredibly powerful, hard-hitting signal about how valuable someone is as a long-term partner. Now, the data here is just fascinating because it's so universal. Just look at how consistent this is across totally different cultures. From Zambia to China to the United States, in this huge 37-culture study, kindness and understanding came out as a top priority for a long-term partner. This isn't just some modern or Western idea. The evidence is pretty clear. It's a deeply human preference. So here's the bottom line. From an evolutionary perspective, kindness isn't just about being pleasant. It's a key indicator. It signals that a potential partner is actually willing to invest their resources in you and in any future kids. And get this, research shows it's not about being nice to everybody. It's about kindness that's specifically directed at the partner and their family, which is a much, much more reliable signal of real long-term commitment. But kindness by itself isn't quite enough. It has to be consistent. And that brings us to our second key trait, reliability. You can think of it like this. If kindness is the promise of future investment, reliability is the proof that a partner's actually going to deliver on that promise, especially when things get tough. And just like we saw with kindness, the data shows that dependability and emotional stability are right up there at the top of the list for women all across the globe. These traits are basically the bedrock of a stable relationship. They send a clear signal that a partner can be counted on through all of life's challenges, whether that was a food shortage way back in our ancestral past or just the stresses of modern life today. And this quote, wow, it really drives home just how high the stakes are. When a partner is unreliable or emotionally all over the place, it creates this deep dissatisfaction in the relationship. And scientists have found this is one of the main reasons for what they call a mate-switching strategy, where someone starts looking for a replacement. It just goes to show how absolutely fundamental reliability is for keeping a long-term relationship together. All right, our final key trait is altruism, and this one takes things up a notch.
It's not just about being kind every now and then. It's about a partner's fundamental willingness to put your well-being right up there with their own. Honestly, it's the ultimate signal that you found a true teammate. So the science has a specific and kind of clunky name for this, an altruistically skewed welfare trade-off ratio. I know, it sounds incredibly complicated, but the idea behind it is actually super simple and really powerful. It just asks, when push comes to shove, does your partner truly have your back? Do they consider your well-being just as much as their own when they're making decisions? So a partner who has this altruistic streak is basically signaling that they are a top-tier cooperator. They're broadcasting to the world that they're going to be a real teammate, someone who is ready to solve life's biggest adaptive challenges right alongside you. Sharing food, caring for kids, weathering any crisis. It's this profound, unspoken signal of long-term viability and the quality of the partnership. Okay, let's pull all these threads together. We've dug into the ancient evolutionary logic behind these preferences for so-called good guy traits. But the huge question is, how does all this deep psychology actually play out in our modern, super fast-paced world? So, if there's one big thing to take away from all this, it's this. These so-called soft skills are in fact hardwired signals. They're not just modern social virtues we decided are nice to have. They are ancient, time-tested indicators that our brains have literally evolved to look for when we're making one of the most important decisions of our lives. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question for our lives today. As we're swiping left and right, filtering for things like height and hobbies, are we consciously looking for these deep signals of kindness and reliability? Or are our ancient instincts still the ones running the show, guiding our hearts from somewhere behind that digital screen? It's definitely something to think about.